Thank you for joining us for our August virtual art opening. Before we get started, I just want to remind you to keep your audio on mute until the end of the presentation, and at that point we'll have a question and answer session. Our featured artists this month are Matt Schaefer and Janet Trierweiler. We're very excited to be hosting their joint exhibit of new work entitled Of Two Minds. For those of you who haven't met Matt and Janet before, they are husband and wife. They live in Evanston. They met at an art show where they discovered that their work had shared many similarities, and they have been creating art together, sometimes collaboratively, ever since. And they both have been working artists for many years and have pieces in many private and corporate collections. So, hello, thank you for joining us, Matt and Janet. It's been a very strange last few months as we've all dealt with the fallout from coronavirus. How have you been dealing with it, and how has it impacted your work? Janet, you want to start with that?
Well, you know, when it first hit, we set up a little drawing station. First thing we did was set up a little drawing station, which actually I was going to use for my class, but we decided, you know, that it was really fun for us. So we did a lot of drawing, you know, with a big board and charcoal, and kind of turned the house into a studio because we figured that that's what we were going to be doing. The main thing was that we knew we were going to be homebound, so we set up our house to, you know, as an art, you know, as a studio, because we weren't out in our outdoor studios yet, because it was March, right?
Right, right.
What do you have to say about that?
Well, it was, yeah, we just, it was almost like an opportunity, you know, lurking, you know, unexpected. And it just, all of a sudden we thought, well, we're just going to, you know, put all our energies to art. Since couldn't do the carpentry, that kind of was on hold. And we lived and breathed art as we actually always want to, but haven't had the opportunity.
Yeah.
And just, you know, we watched the bank balance go down, but we were painting. We were painting. We were happy.
We actually had a lot of fun. We were doing paper mache and all kinds of crazy.
Wow.
We just finding materials around the house, and a lot of experimentation. But we did a lot of drawing, mostly drawing, which was really fun.
And ultimately, as the lockdown ended, you two went outside, right? And started painting outside?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's our, you know, we have, Matt works in, has a studio in the garage, and I have an attached studio attached to the garage, but they're not heated. So it took a little while before we were out there, but that's kind of what we look forward to all year, for some to get in our outdoor studios. I mean, not outdoor, but, you know.
Fresh air.
Fresh air studios. They are definitely open air studios.
Open air studios. I like that. Yeah. I always have the garage door open, so it has kind of this neighborhood feel to it.
Yeah.
Neighborhood. The neighbors come by and always look in and say hello. Of course, nobody knows what I'm doing, you know. So.
Well, thank you. That's very helpful as background for the work in this show. I'd like to ask each of you a few questions to get started, and I'm sure our audience will have more questions at the end. So Matt, let's start with you. And I am going to ask you to read the artist statement that you put together for the exhibit, which was really informative, I thought. And while you're doing that, I'm going to run a little video of your work in the show. So let's see if I can actually do this.
Ready?
Not yet. Give me a second.
You could go on long.
Almost ready. Yeah, you can start. You can start talking for sure.
I attempt to create a cohesive composition using the painting skills and techniques I've acquired over the course of my artistic career. I use people, cars, buildings, cats and dogs, street signs, lighting fixtures, etc., as form and information. I also employ what might be seen as large abstract form to bring a presence to the surface and highlight the subject matter. Going back and forth with these two ideas or elemental understandings and employing an increasingly emotional expression fueled by my desire to push beyond my understanding, the painting takes shape. The artwork, when and if completed, has evolved into a harmony between the different elements, the physical, the emotional, the personal, the story, the color, the line, and form. All that is there to be shared with each other.
Thank you, Matt. I think that that really provides some perspective on your work that will help people understand what you've put here on these canvases. So we'll go through each slides of all of your work as we go through the questions. So the first question I had is that you've often said that drawing is a very important and fundamental part of your work. And I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think the drawing is my most, the freest articulation of working two-dimensionally, using charcoal and paper, and a lot of times inexpensive paper, just to, you know, so it's not, I don't feel that it's overly important finished. And it not only breaks up the paper in or canvas in a compositional way, but it also depicts the form of the figurations that are going to be in the painting. And not only that, it also becomes very expressive of my own personal feelings, especially when I am not afraid to be more emotive and less exacting in form.
So I put together a little detail here of the last painting that we saw, which are these two dogs with which almost no outline at all. You've created these two dogs with a lot of personality. Like, that's just amazing.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, yeah. And so a lot of things can happen, you know, working expressively or emotionally, a lot of unexpected things can happen. And here, I think it's wonderful capturing the spirit of the dogs. You can obviously, it seems very happy and playful.
Yeah.
And it's not just a dog. You know, it's about these dogs, they have feelings, you know, and they're there, and that's very important to me. But it also breaks up, it's also puzzle pieces. You know, yeah. It breaks up into different forms. Mm-hmm. And that's very important too, that these forms relate and harmonize. And so that's kind of part of, you know, the drawing kind of sets up in the painting, you know, when I'm doing a painting, the drawing sets up in a very loose way how things are going to be divided up.
Mm-hmm. So the other part of your equation is color. And you've used some particularly vibrant colors in this series of work. And the colors that you choose don't necessarily relate to what you're seeing visually as you're painting. Can you tell us a little bit about the role of color in your work?
Well, it's just, you know, I'm not, even though I paint, you know, figuratively like this at times, it's not really about the object that I'm copying. And it becomes more the added element of space, mm-hmm. really, is what the figurative is about, as opposed to the abstract, which would be flatter. And the figurative ones, it's more about developing the third dimension as well as the two-dimensional. And the color becomes more abstract. It's more of just at my whim, however I'm feeling, you know, and what might work against what. And and it's, you know, it's a lot of it is tones, what's dark, what's light, but obviously color has a very important role to play. You know, red and blue could have the same tone,
Yeah.
but they're totally different, you know, to our rods and cones, you know, and in our the psyche. So it's pretty much just about my own personal feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've always painted the figure, but in these paintings, you've incorporated a lot of figures into cityscapes. And it seems like that's something that has kind of been happening over a period of time. Why is that? Why do you, like, several years ago, this would have been a painting of the underpass, but there wouldn't have been any people there, I think. So now why is it suddenly populated?
Uh, you know, I feel like that I always wanted people. And at the beginning of the other paintings, there were people, but they'd slowly get taken out because I want them to look right.
Ah.
Maybe they didn't work or whatever. There was some kind of blockage there that you know, that would be left. But now I feel you know, I just go for it.
Yeah.
You know, I'll relate it to my guitar playing. I play guitar, and I've played all my life, and I was never really great, but I never became, you know, in my own mind, I never became really an excellent guitar player. But at one point, you know, maybe when I was 60, I said, you know, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put my spirit behind it and go for it, you know, and whatever. And I think that's with these people. I'm just going for it.
Well, and again, I think these, like this little detail here, again shows how expressive you can be with just a very few strokes. You know, I think that's amazing that you can create a face or a silhouette of a woman here with just, you know, 4 or 5 brush strokes. It's amazing to me. You've been painting for a long time and you've produced lots of different types of work. How has your work evolved over time and where do you see it going from here?
I guess how I have seen it evolve is about, and this actually applies to what we were just talking about, is letting go of feelings of inadequacy.
Mm-hmm.
And those seem to be the feelings of inadequacy, those are, well, this isn't good enough, I got to make it better or whatever, seem to actually become detrimental. You know, we think of it, oh, I got to fix this up, you know, because it's not good enough, you know, but those actually end up kind of detrimental to the painting.
Yeah.
And when you let go and just kind of go for it, you know, it seems to go forward, develop.
So you've just gotten looser and freer, which is kind of what every artist I've ever talked to seems to be going for. So you've accomplished that, which is great.
Yeah, it seems to open the doors.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that was the questions I wanted to ask you. I'd like to turn over to Janet now. And Janet, we're going to do the same thing with you. I'm going to have you read your artist statement while we view your pieces.
Now, because I'm on my computer, we're on my computer, I can't bring it up. Can you, I guess you'll have to just show the artist statement if you can, or.
Oh, okay, I can do that. Sure.
Oh, you can, okay.
I have it here. Then I'll show the video afterwards then.
Yeah, and then if we can move the.
Yeah, let me see how to do that. Oops, I'll have to hold it over there.
All right. Let's see, a little missing. Okay. Well, it says, we can observe a profound and universal connection from one culture of the world to another in the art of children. Children are unrestrained in imaginative experience and play. My painting process involves this type of active imagination, recognizing only the norms of expressivity guided by intuition. painting imaginatively unforms, I think it says,
Yes.
well, I'll say images, supplied by our perception. This malleability gives rise to new forms which merge the visible perceived world with artistic possibilities. My process is improvisational. I believe it gives paintings a timeless vitality. Whether painting figurative or abstract, there are relationships happening with a need for immediate response. This becomes a two-dimensional, colorful dance. I let the work move through me while also stepping away to check on its progress. The fluidity of the paint, like life, is always on the threshold of change. And the most important step in this dance is to catch the painting when it happens and walk away.
Okay, so now I'm going to just roll this quick video tour of your pieces, and then we'll go into questions. So we'll go through all of these pieces individually as Janet answers questions, just like we did with Matt. But this just gives you a little flavor for how they're hung in the gallery in case you can't get in here.
Yeah, I thought the show looked really well, really nicely put together.
Good, thank you. So the first question I was going to ask you is that you describe yourself as an experiential painter. Can you talk about what that means and how it impacts your work?
So I guess the best way to describe that is to be observant of what's happening in the process. So, you know, you may have an idea, like with these paintings, I really was thinking about the lake and my experience of going there every day and seeing something really different every day we went. Can you move it over a little bit so you can see the whole thing?
You know, I have to hold, oh yeah, I can hold it over there. Okay.
Oh, okay. Anyways, so, you know, because of the, you know, lockdown, we were walking to the lake every day, and, you know, the lake actually can, you know, make me laugh. It's just so alive. And, you know, sometimes the waves, when they're really big and they come shooting over the rocks, you know, it just has so much personality. And so, you know, I was really thinking about that. And I was also, which I don't use blue that much, but I just, you know, really, maybe I was feeling blue, I don't know, but just used a lot of blue. And this was kind of breaking out of the house and getting back into the open air studio. And I was so excited to paint. These are, you know, they're nice size canvases. They're not huge. I think, what, like 30 by 40, something.
Yeah, a little bit bigger than that, yeah.
And so it was just, you know, I hadn't painted freely like this in a while, because in the winter we paint in our basement studio and it's a little bit more figurative. So it was really, it was just joy. You know, I felt like just really joyful getting out there. And, but I was thinking about horizontals. You know, I've done a lot of vertical paintings, and these are mostly horizontal. And I was thinking about limited palette, you know, with the blues, and how I could really push those blues. And just, you know, they're pretty experimental, like all my work is just like trying to push beyond, like Matt said, you know, push beyond what you understand and have a new experience that will lead to, you know, the expression, you know, just, you know, it's the expression that really, I think, comes through.
Yeah.
And they're pretty, you know, they're fairly minimal. I think, you know, I started out because I was ordering a lot of stuff online, and so my cat food was coming in these boxes, and I saw this box and I get really excited about this orange border on this box and the white space, and I wanted to paint on it. And this is when we were still in the house. and I couldn't wait to paint on it. And then I started painting with blue because of the contrast with the orange. And so that's kind of what doing a lot of small ones on these boxes led to the series of these paintings.
Got it. So I didn't know until just recently that you and Matt both tended to paint representational work in the winter in the basement. And so I learned that about Matt yesterday. I'm just learning that about you now, because it's been my perception that you mostly have gravitated away from representational and towards abstract. And so maybe that's not true. That's just maybe a incorrect assumption on my part. But you do a lot of abstract work, and I was just curious as to what has moved you in that direction.
The abstract?
Yeah.
Well, I think, working big, and working improvisationally. I like to, I always say, make it a happening. And so for me, it's very physical. I like the physicality of paint, and I like the liquid paint. So there's a certain kind of, I don't want to say choreography, but it's very physical. And so I don't want to be tied down to certain forms with these bigger paintings. So anyways, so they're very fluid and, improvisational. And so I feel like being tied down to like a intellectual or a specific form really wouldn't work with that type of process.
I see. Okay.
And so in the winter, we are more kind of tied down to a different kind of space. And so I work on an easel, where these are done on the floor or partially on the floor. And so it really is kind of a seasonal thing. And it's not just representational work I do in the winter. I also work on small abstracts that I work on an easel.
Okay. So I noticed on your website that you separate your work into 4 categories: abstract, essential nature, elemental, and flex, which I thought was really interesting. And I was curious if you could talk about the differences in these bodies of work, and what category are the paintings in this exhibit in?
Well, I started this essential nature series a couple years ago when, I told you, we have like the open air studio, but we also paint outside, and we call it the Studio of the South because it's, kind of our dream, just a big open space, and we can work on really big canvases. And I noticed that when I'm working out there, nature shows up in the painting, literally, things like seeds and bugs and everything was showing up in the paintings. And like the wind, I felt like the wind was showing up in the paintings, and the type of day it was. And it was really interesting for me that, my experience with what was happening in nature or in the weather, or what was around me was really visible, I felt, in the paintings, that action and the movement. And so I called it essential nature, just to tie it to, because they're tied to nature, but they're abstracts.
Yeah.
So these I would put in that category.
Okay. So you've been teaching art classes for years, both to children and to adults. How do you think that teaching has impacted your work?
Well, anything you do that's not painting takes you away from the studio, which is, it's a certain tension. There's a certain tension I feel when I'm not able to paint, or I have to put painting on hold to do, make the money and do other things. And, but then, there's this really wonderful learning experience that happens, like from working with children, their freedom, working with art, you learn so much from them. And I have really long time students that I've been working with for a long time. They're very talented, and, a lot of them exhibit, and, they're professional artists. And what I do with my classes is I focus on a certain aspect of, technical aspect or philosophical aspect and now because we're online, I focus on that. They focus on that for a whole week. And I then am also focused on that. And so because I, first of all, have to put together the class, so that brings my focus to that, and then do some examples. And so I really learn so much from teaching. I think it's the best way to, to really learn is to teach is to learn.
Great. Well, that's the end of my questions. Thanks to both of you. And now I'd like everybody who is with us to turn on their audio and to feel free to ask Matt and Janet any questions that they might have. You could just shout them out, or you can use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. And if you do that, then I'll read the questions to Matt and Janet when they come up. Who's got a question? We have a question from Alicia asking Matt to explain the names that he gives to his pieces. That is such a good question.
Well, they're just random letters and numbers. And I like that because it doesn't implicate the paintings in any particular way. It just gives reference to them.
So you're not telling anybody what they're seeing, you're allowing them to decide what they're seeing for themselves. Is that it?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the painting of the building, I don't remember what the name of it is, but you had little kind of like crib notes on your website, so I knew that was Norris Center at Northwestern. Okay, well, I like it much better not knowing it's Norris Center. So, being a Northwestern.
I think that Norris Center building is a beautiful building.
See, and I don't remember it that way.
So there's some very interesting architecture at Northwestern, but that's another story.
Yeah, it's another story, right. I had another question from Tom who wanted to know what your favorite piece was, both of you, in this exhibit. Which one do you like the most?
Well, I can answer because it's right behind you. And the reason I like it so much is because it was in our, in our bedroom, and we lived with it. So I got very attached to it.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
How about you, Matt?
I like that one too, behind you.
No, which one are yours?
Good answer. Good answer.
How about that one, the underpass one?
Underpass with the faces in front that we looked
Not
at.
the one you showed the detail of, but the other one.
I have another underpass one here.
Oh my God. Not abstract, huh?
Wait, is it, let's go for a walk.
Yeah.
You mean this one?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
You see the L train up there on the upper?
I didn't get that was the underpass because you didn't put that on the name, so I was interpreting it in a different way. Just as you wanted. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you first of all to Matt and Janet for sharing your time and your thoughts with us. Thanks to all those of you who have joined us. We really appreciate it. And we hope to see you all again next month.